One of the most powerful tools we have at our disposal is coaching. However, it is criminally underutilized within organizations. Let's look at some of the key statistics surrounding coaching as a whole, and some of this may come as a massive surprise to you. Training and coaching leads to an increase of 88% in productivity versus just 23% with training alone. And how does this affect sales pipelines? Well, close rates typically increase by 17%, expired deals decrease by 63%, and close date changes decrease by 25%. Now this one here is really compelling. Days since last customer interaction from the sales department decreases by 73%. What that basically translates is that more engagement with customers if we're doing proper coaching with reps. As you can see from those statistics, coaching is absolutely critical within any organization. However, what's the difference between coaching and training? And what actually is coaching? Well, let's tackle that first question to begin with. Training is very much the transaction of knowledge. Think about it in terms of a classroom, sitting there, someone in a very chalk and talk fashion explaining to you how to do something. Coaching, however, is very, very different. Let's use this example to help us truly understand what coaching is. Let's say you approached me asking me where I keep my scissors. Now, the easy thing for me to do is to tell you where the scissors are. I keep them in the third drawer down of my kitchen. However, by asking you some tactical, pointed questions that are designed to help you come up with the answer yourself, we're actually teaching you a way of thinking. So let's say hypothetically I said to you, where would you keep your scissors? And you said, probably in my kitchen. Okay, great. Whereabouts in the kitchen would you keep them? Probably in the drawers. Interesting. Which drawer would you keep them in? Well, top drawer's always cutlery, second drawer's always tea towels and cling wrap, probably the third drawer down. Okay, perfect. Go and have a look and see if they're there. You then go and discover the scissors yourself. And by guiding you through that process, I've taught you a way of thinking. Now, this is where it becomes incredibly powerful. The next time you're looking for something that I own, and you say, as an example, where do you keep your can opener? Instead of coming to me, you're more likely to say, where would I keep my can opener? I'd probably keep it in the kitchen. I'd probably keep it in the third drawer down. Ah, there it is. Now, this is because we're creating a habitual way of thinking about a problem. And when you start inserting other problems, that same thinking can be applied to a multitude of different problems. And this is fundamentally what coaching is. By guiding someone to the answer themselves, you're creating new neural pathways in the brain for them to come up those answers themselves, but more importantly, a long-term strategy to dealing with problems or even questions. So how do we translate this to the world of sales? Well, think about the opportunities that you have with interactions with your staff to start using coaching. Now, there's pipeline reviews, there's at-desk coaching when reps come up to you and start asking you some questions. There's obviously weekly catch-ups, there's Monday morning meetings. In fact, I'd argue that every opportunity should be used as a way of coaching someone. The reason this is so important is that we're trying to create a behavioural shift in the way people think about things. And ultimately, by investing that time in the first place, you'll get a heap load of time back because you won't have to keep answering the same questions again and again and again. Also, by the time someone does come to you with a problem, they're much further down that funnel. They've gone through a process of thinking about that problem in a great deal of depth and detail by the time they come to you. So let's talk about some tangible steps and processes you can put in place to even start the process of coaching. So remember our objectives with this. Number one, we're trying to get someone to look at a problem from every single angle. To do that, we first must admit that we don't always have the answers, but we must assume that the rep either has the answer or can find the resource to the answer itself. So that's our objective, is for the rep to leave the conversation with a strategy that they're going to undertake, how they're going to do it, what could potentially go wrong, and ultimately what the result is they're expecting to have. So let's start by talking about guided discovery. Guided discovery is ultimately the questions that you ask to help the rep come up with the answer themselves. So let's use a really simple example. Let's say a rep comes up to you and says, I've called John, I can't get through to him. Every time I speak to his gatekeeper, they're not putting me through. So let's talk about some of the questions that we can ask to ultimately guide this rep to the right answer. So we can start with, well, what have you tried so far? And where did that go wrong? And why do you think that happened? Okay, good. So what haven't you tried? I haven't tried this, I haven't tried that, I haven't tried that. What do you think would happen if you did try this? And why is that important? And ultimately, what's that going to achieve? Okay, great. So we've identified 3 things there that you've not tried. So how are you going to go about trying these things? I'm going to do X, I'm going to do Y, I'm going to do Z. Okay, interesting. And what could potentially go wrong? This, and this. How would you mitigate that? Etc, etc. So all of a sudden we're getting them to come up with a strategy of things that they've tried, why it went wrong, what they haven't tried, and what they can expect to happen. And if something does go wrong, how do they respond to that? And then we can put some time-based questions around that as well. So when are you going to give this a go? What's the first thing you're going to do once you leave this conversation? And how do you think that's going to affect things? So now they're coming up with the strategy of what they're going to do, but also the timeline that's associated with that strategy. Now that's all very important, and this is where a lot of coaching goes wrong, is that we get the rep to come up with an answer, they've got this wonderful strategy, but there's no timeline of when they're going to achieve it. And the second thing that goes wrong is the action points. If we've invested this time on taking a rep through a coaching journey, and we don't set some robust action points in place, it's truly been a waste of everyone's time. So let's talk about how we can do that. Well, first things first, we need to agree on what the strategy is. What is it they're going to do, when they're going to do it by, and what are the times and the dates associated with those steps. Then we want to talk about the how. How are they going to actually implement this feedback or these coaching outcomes? And then lastly is the outcome. So this outcome needs to be documented, and it needs to drive the next coaching session. So we can send them an email of what we discussed and ask what we want in return. We can ask them to leave a voice note, whatever it is you want to choose. It's important that we're documenting what it is that they're going to go and do, and ultimately the outcome that came out the back of it. If we can achieve those 3 things with every coaching interaction, actively listening to what they're saying, using guided discovery to get them to come up with the answer, and documenting in detail the outcomes that you're expecting and what they're going to go and actually do, then ultimately we're putting ourselves in a good position to start turning coaching from a moment or something that just happens into something that's deeply ingrained into the DNA of the organisation. And that's the key thing. The more you coach, the more it becomes the conversation or the framework for communication in which you're having. I hope this has been valuable. I have a free coaching scorecard. If you're interested, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll make sure that I get that over to you. Remember to subscribe, remember to like, and remember to share. And as always, happy selling, or in this case, happy coaching.